Hi, I'm Adam Brooks Weber. This is the Merry Mystic. I'm glad you're here. And here today is a church. This is the Clare Congregational United Church of Christ in Clare, Michigan. Let me pan the camera around a little and show you where we are. This is a beautiful old church. It's a little over 100 years old. We have these lovely handmade, curved wooden pews. Can't buy those out of a catalog. There's some classic stained glass. The church is a little over 100, but the stained glass is older. It was taken out of a previous building belonging to the same congregation. But I didn't really want to talk about architecture today. I'd like to talk a little about this. This is, imagine for a moment, a bowl of pills. In reality, they're candy, but imagine that these are different pills, all different shapes, all different colors. And imagine that in this bowl there are cures that the world desperately needs. A cure for all cancers, a cure for all dementias, a cure for heart and lung and muscle and bone. That would be a huge treasure. But now imagine that in addition, there's also some poison in the bowl. Fast poisons, slow poisons, all kinds of poisons, all mixed together. This bowl represents my religious heritage as a Christian. Because let me tell you two things I believe about Christianity. The first is that we Christians are the inheritors of a brilliant religious tradition. The teachings of Jesus, the spiritual practices, these are things that change people's lives and make them better. And I'm not just talking about a small marginal improvement in individual happiness. The peoples of the world are on dangerous paths today. Paths that lead to chaos and destruction, and even one of the teachings of Jesus, if followed faithfully, could change that. And so our brilliant treasure could save the world. That's one thing I believe about Christianity. But I also believe that we are the inheritors of a poisonous religious tradition. And if we don't do something, if we don't deal with the poisons, they will bring us down as they have killed before. Most Sundays I preach up here and I talk about the treasures. I teach people about the brilliant religious tradition and the gifts that can change their lives. But let me talk a little today about the poisons. One obvious example of the poisonous attitudes that we inherit toward gay and lesbian peoples. My denomination, the United Church of Christ, is open and affirming, so we welcome people into the full life of the church, regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. But in many parts of the Christian household, that is obviously not the case. So that could be one example of a poison pill, but it's actually a very small poison pill. Critical, of course, to people whose lives are damaged by it. But still, if you consider how rarely this topic is discussed at all in Scripture, there are some much bigger poison pills in this bowl. For example, many of our faith ancestors believed that God fought on their side against neighboring tribes. In fact, they believed that God was essentially genocidal, that God not only encouraged but helped them to completely exterminate their neighboring tribes, the Amorites and the Amalekites and the Canaanites and all the miscellaneous otherites. And if you think I'm exaggerating, then you haven't read the Old Testament recently. Open the book of Joshua almost anywhere. Another example, many of our faith ancestors believed that God was angry and vengeful. Here's a sermon preached by Jonathan Edwards in Massachusetts in 1741. Jonathan Edwards. The God that holds you over the pit of hell, much as one holds a spider or some loathsome insect over the fire, abhors you and is dreadfully provoked. His wrath towards you burns like fire. He looks upon you as worthy of nothing else but to be cast into the fire. He is of purer eyes than to bear to have you in his sight. You are 10,000 times more abominable in his eyes than the most hateful, venomous serpent is in ours. Can't preach that way anymore. More's the pity. God, I miss the screaming. But even though the preaching style of Jonathan Edwards has gone out of fashion, the message is still very much with us. Many people still believe that God is essentially going to send most of humanity to eternal punishment for their inevitable sins. They believe that God is making a list and checking it twice, and not in a nice way. A third poison pill example, to my mind one of the most dangerous, is that many of our faith ancestors believed that their religion was right and all the others were wrong. Black and white. There are many voices in the Old Testament claiming that God punishes people for praying to the wrong gods, or even for praying to the right gods, but in the wrong way, in the wrong place. And there are voices in the New Testament telling us that the only way to avoid the wrath shortly to come is to believe and to say you believe certain things about Jesus. Since Jesus' day, the church has really run with this message. Extra ecclesiam nulla salus, wrote Augustine. Outside of the church, there is no salvation. This is the belief that all people who are not properly Christian are going to suffer an eternity in hell, and since there's nothing worse than that, you're justified in doing almost anything to them in order to Christianize the world and root out heretics. This is our heritage as Christians. This is the problem that we face, and it's the problem that you and I, as Merry Mystics, face because we're committed to following a spiritual path. And I am committed to following the way of Jesus. And so I can't just turn my back on the whole bowl. Yet I have to be aware that there's some poison mixed in there. This is what I mean when I describe myself as a progressive Christian. I'm a Christian because I believe in the treasure, and because I claim Jesus as my primary revelation of God's harmonious way for humankind. But I'm a progressive Christian because I'm concerned about the poison, and I'm trying to do something about it. My friends, I have a big dream. I believe that there are many, many people out there, thousands, tens of thousands of people out there whose lives could be better if they could share some of this treasure, but who will never do so unless they can find a community where they can walk a spiritual path without having to leave behind their brains and their senses of humor and their freedom of conscience. That's the dream that keeps me coming back. It's the dream that keeps me coming back there to preach on a Sunday morning. And it's the dream that keeps me coming here to make videos for my fellow merry mystics. So scroll down now and please leave me a comment. Tell me what's going on. Tell me what are the poison pills that have affected your life. And if you're watching this video anywhere but on adambrooksweber.com, please go over there. You can leave a message and you can sign up to receive the Merry Mystic every week. And now until next week, may God bless you and keep you. And may you properly enjoy your share of the treasure. Bye now.